If you are having thoughts of self-harm, please call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Hotline, or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guests only. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Welcome to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, a podcast devoted to changing the way eating disorders and mental illness are viewed in our society. With your hosts, Jack and Linda Major and Ellen Bennett. Today's guest is Dr. Seema Khaneja. Seema Khaneja graduated from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City and completed her pediatrics residency at New York Hospital-Cornell Medical Center. During medical school and after residency, she studied various complementary healing modalities, including Ayurvedic nutrition, mind-body medicine, yoga, and meditation. For 10 years, Seema practiced holistic medicine, caring for children and adults with a focus on chronic physical and mental health challenges. Seema is also the author of Physician, Heal Thyself, A Doctor's Journey from Medicine to Miracles, available on Amazon. For more information about Seema and Coaching for Inner Peace, visit coachingforinnerpeace.com.
Welcome, listeners, to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, episode 133. College Students, Mental Health Crisis, Suicide, with Dr. Seema Khaneja. Listeners, we're so glad to have you join us today, and this discussion may make all of us rethink the way we respond to people who are struggling with any mental health issue. This is such an important topic. Dr. Khaneja will be with us momentarily. This podcast is brought to you by the Emily Connection and KMB for Answers, two Rochester-based eating disorder nonprofits that couldn't be closer to our hearts. Today, your hosts are my wonderful husband, Jack Major, who's sitting right next to me, and yours truly. Ellen Bennett could not be here today, but she's with us in spirit. And just a reminder, all the links for today's show will be in the show notes. Welcome, Jack.
Thanks, Linda, and welcome everybody out there. Thanks for being with us again for this really important topic. I'll switch it back to you, Linda, for your quote of the day.
Okay, my quote is by Leo Buscaglia. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, and an honest compliment or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around.
Wow.
That's pretty appropriate.
Pretty appropriate, yeah, for sure.
Okay, Jack, take it away.
Well, Seema, it's great to be here with you. I mean, we met a few years ago, and like I always say, there's no coincidence. People come into our lives exactly when they're supposed to. So you have been a godsend to us, and so glad you could join us again today. And we're going to discuss the mental health crisis, which is, I think, on everybody's thoughts and so many podcasts and things out there, because it's affecting our young people. And right now, today, we're going to be talking more specifically about college students and referring to a very important article that came up in the New York Times. It was called The Unthinkable Mental Health Crisis That Shook a New England College, that was published not long ago, January 22nd, 2024. And, after reading that article and
And that was by Brian Ulrich, right?
Ulrich?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We just had to, we knew we had to do this podcast and delve into this deeper.
And how fitting it is that Dr. Seema Khaneja is here really to lead our discussion. As we heard, she is skilled in meditation, stress management, and holistic medicine. And she also happens to be a dedicated pediatrician who has cared for children for decades. She is one of the kindest, most compassionate people, and she is also a fantastic mom. Welcome, Seema.
Wow, thanks for that introduction, first of all. And also, this is such an important topic. And I can just say that when we speak about mental health, and specifically about suicide, it is such a heavy topic, right? It's just not an easy topic to talk about. And so I'm hoping that our, sharing today will demonstrate how one place, this college, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, was able to respond in a way that was not easy for them, but also can give us hope so that we can shed some light and hope on this topic that really can be very, very difficult.
Yeah. Came up with some statistics and found that suicide is the third leading cause of death for 18 to 24-year-olds. That's 21% of all injury deaths are attributed to suicide. And it's the number 2 cause of death for college students, which is a sad statistic. It really is. 25% of people in college know someone who died from suicide, and 40% know someone who attempted suicide. So, statistics don't lie. I always say that, kids that go to college, they move away from home, could be 10 miles away, could be 1,000 miles away. And, it can be very traumatic. Some kids fit right in, some kids don't. Maybe they didn't fit into high schools, and the cliques and everything that were there. So, there's loneliness, helplessness, they have these academic concerns and, financial concerns. So it's a big transition, for an 18-year-old to suddenly be on their own. And so they need support and help. So this article talks about, in the span of 6 months, from the summer of 2021 to January of 2022, there were 7 deaths from suicide among the students enrolled at Worcester
Yeah.
Polytechnic Institute. I knew I was going to struggle with that. And it's a small New England college campus. I think they've got like 5,000 undergrads and a couple thousand grad students. So, 7,000 students is pretty small. You compare it to University of Michigan, it's got 52,000 students, and Harvard with 21,000 students. It's a nice small campus. And this was a huge aberration because from 2006 to 2021, they only lost 2 students to suicide over the span of those 15 years. So, Seema, can you share what happened next at the school?
Yeah. So, Jack, as you were pointing out, just going to college is a big transition for so many reasons, right? Leaving home, leaving family, leaving the places that you were comfortable, leaving the academic structure, everything is new. So we can understand why there would be stress, right? That makes sense. And specifically, WPI, as we know, Polytechnic Institute, right? So it draws those that are, pursuing those STEM classes, right? The
research,
science, technology,
research,
all of that. And so it's definitely, so first of all, they just looked at themselves, right? And so we could understand, and they understood. It's a fast-paced, very intense academic culture, lots of academic demands. More male students are enrolled, and we know that as the statistics you quoted, suicide is more common among males in general, although I think it's women attempt more, but males succeed more due to the choices of their method of suicide. So anyway, so more male students. And then also this idea that those students that are drawn to these fields, research, tech stuff, can be more introverted. And even this idea of neurodivergence, which this article talked about, that they do process and learn things differently, right? So already these things predispose them to having greater struggles to do what? To form social bonds, social connections. And we know that social connections, social bonds are very protective, just in life, right? They help you have greater well-being in life and definitely deal with mental and any challenges better. So they're already predisposed to having more risk for that. And so they looked at those things and they knew about it, and they had mental health structures in place, but they were willing to question that this isn't working, right? What we have isn't working. So the faculty and staff really just started to just informally, they were processing, emails were being sent, this was like nothing formal, but everyone was shook up, as even not the 6th or the 7th, just even the first one, any suicide is one too many, right?
Right.
Any suicide.
Right.
So they basically started to talk about it. And this was basically, as we can see, it was summer of 2021. So right on the heels of the pandemic, right? Things were still in very much of a COVID structure. And so they felt like they were like the first line responders. And so this was very stressful for the teachers. And so basically after the third death, they set up an emergency task force to see what were other causes and what could they do to support. Now, sometimes when something happens, like you want an immediate, right? You want something to, and why not, right? I mean, there's trauma, there's the loss of trauma, there's grief, anger, all kinds of emotions. But because they're this Polytechnic Institute, they really approached it like scientists. And they said, all right, let's just kind of go back to the drawing board and see what's going on. Let's gather what we can, and then we will make recommendations. So they had the Dean King of the College of Arts and Sciences. They had someone from their counseling center, the assistant director of counseling, faculty, staff members, but also students from all part of the school. And they were very systematic, very coordinated as scientists, right? So that was a strength that they had, and they drew upon it. They wanted to be very comprehensive, and they didn't want to just get, like I said, just the student's perspective, just the faculty, or just the counseling, but like a very holistic perspective. So there were lots of town hall meetings where even parents, right? And as you know, I'm a parent of a college age, and that's such an important part. And they invited parents to be part of this as well. And then they also even did focus groups, because think about this: within a college, you have subsects of different populations, right? You have Black students, you have Asian students, you have the whole LGBTQ, community, and they have. We know that suicide risk and suicides are higher
in all those,
all those populations.
Native Americans, first generation. So they were also invited with those that would be in charge to help them process, that were of similar background, so that there would be a level of safety, so they could express and share. And then really everyone on campus was invited to complete a written survey. So they were very comprehensive. Let's bring all voices in, no judgment. Let's air this out. Let's speak, all of that. So that was one of their first steps.
And how wonderful that is, because their voices were heard. Everybody felt that their voices were heard. And especially for students that, what would you say, maybe neurodivergent, right? Maybe just broadly, right? Oftentimes it's harder for them to express themselves. And they have a variety of ways in which they could do it, which was really nice too.
Right.
Well, it made them feel connected to the school. The school really cared, and there was support for them, which, again, can be a protective, tool out there, so that you're proactive as opposed to being reactive.
And they're all part of the body of the school.
Yeah.
So they lost one of theirs.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was very touching in the article. I believe it was the dean where, she got a call maybe after the second or third death, and it was late at night. And basically the person who called her said, we lost another one of our kids. That's how they worded it. And that just speaks to their community that was already there. And even then, these things can happen, right? Mm-hmm. So what about in places where that's not even there?
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, as I said, they're, Polytechnic. So they had data analysis, all of that. They used all of those tools. And they were trying to answer these questions to identify patterns. Which members of the community were most affected by which kinds of stress, and how are they experiencing that stress academically and personally? So they were really trying to fine tune, where is it happening? How is it happening? How are they processing? So it wasn't okay, there's stress. Because what does that mean? We know there's stress, but what does it mean to me when I'm trying to complete a project? Or what does it mean to me when I'm trying to deliver a lecture, or right? Mm-hmm. And what does it mean if I'm Asian American? What does it mean if I'm African American, all of that. So they were trying to understand that. And basically what they found was burnout. A lot of people talked about burnout, not just the faculty, but also the students, that there was just too much being asked of them. And the faculty and scholars of color, especially, because they were the groups that tended to be the one that were kind of like the would-be counselors, the unofficial counselors, where people felt safe to go to them, or of the LGBTQ, I always say that wrong. I'm sorry. LGBTQ community as well. My apologies there. And so they were overwhelmed. The students needed more listening, more guidance than they felt equipped for. The students were feeling like everything was focused on their academic performance, their overall health and well-being, their humanity wasn't really being taken care of. And what they were feeling was not unusual. This is what was happening nationwide, right? Too much work, too little community resilience. We're in the middle of a pandemic. What does this mean? What's going to happen in the future? What does this degree even mean, right? All of these questions were up in the air, and just no sense when this uncertainty would end. And we know from a stress perspective, if I tell someone, okay, you have something, whatever it is, and in 6 weeks it's going to be over, whatever it is, right? Maybe, you know, someone's got to have some change or a procedure, but you know there's a beginning and there's an end. But when we have no idea of that, that really is not something our systems are equipped with,
Right.
you know, and that's what they were discovering, right?
It's kind of like COVID, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like they were a microcosm, right, of what was happening, you know, on a more national, global level.
Yeah, I found this study. It's called the Healthy Mind Study. And from 2007 to 2021, they surveyed, this was a big survey, 520,000 students. And from that period of time, in those 14 years, 21.3 reported intentionally injuring themselves. 11.7 reported suicidal ideation, 4.6 planned a suicide, and 1.2 attempted a suicide. So that was from 2007 to 2021. Then in 2022, yeah. Everything went up, some substantially. Reported intentionally injuring themselves from 21.3 to 22%. Not that big a jump. But reported suicidal ideation went from 11.7 to 15%. 4.6 planned a suicide in 2021, jumped to 6%, and from 1.2 attempting suicide went up to 2%. So, you know, everything, and who knows what it is today. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's obviously gotten worse, and we have to do better to prevent these things and support these students.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, there was also, you know, when we talk about grief, right, we've talked about how grief can be processed differently. So many places believe that if there is one suicide and if you end up, this is a way of thinking, right, that if you kind of talk about it too much or almost sort of like give it too much attention, there can be this suicide contagion where others will, like, you know, copycat and do that. So the faculty were kind of doing that by trying to keep things normal, acknowledging, but then also keeping structure, keeping things going. And really the students were just appalled by that because they really felt like first there was a suicide, they lost a friend, perhaps a college roommate, you know, whoever this person was, and now not acknowledging was further trauma. So there was a divergent approach, and that revealed that. And so they tried to express that, and the students felt that not acknowledging robbed them of the group reflection that they needed, you know, as a group to do it. And they really felt that was part of their healing. And how are they supposed to do it alone? So they organized a candlelight support walk, and the local florist around WPI donated thousands of flowers. And what I thought was really touching, Linda, you and I were talking about this, how mothers from the community lined up to give hugs to any students that needed one.
Wow.
That is so human and so
powerful.
Yes. I think each one of those responses was a community pulling together with their gifts.
Yeah. I mean, this is it's a small community, and you know that the college there is probably their main.
Yes.
It's economic support, you know.
Yeah.
So
that's
that's great. That's brings tears to my eyes, actually.
Yeah, it does. No, it does. It's very, very human. And I know in medicine, you know, pediatric medicine, and we would have something that we would have to tell a patient, and it wasn't good news. It just wasn't good news, no matter how it wasn't. Or a prognosis and all that. And when I saw my mentors doing it, and then when I was in that role, what I thought was done well and not done well, I think the biggest thing was being with them. Being with them and staying with them. They're not abandoned. You can't change, right, outcomes. I mean, we do the best we can in medicine, right? But we're limited. We're very limited. And so that feeling of like, I'm with you, I think I would see that would just go so far. It would go so far. And they would appreciate that so much, even in the, the presence of something happening that no one wants that to happen to anyone, like a suicide or, anything like that.
Well, and as a medical provider, you're fixers, right? You want to help people. That's why they go into the profession. And I'm sure that it's very hard to hear difficult news, but it's very hard to deliver it. But I'm sure those patients felt the compassion. And I think sometimes there are no magic fixes, but to know that somebody really cares and has got your back and will do the best they can makes a huge difference. And I think it's a noble, wonderful profession, but it has to be a very hard profession for many reasons, lots of times.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I was watching an interview yesterday with Robin Williams. This is going back to 2000 and it was with David Frost. So it was back before 2010. He did the movie Patch Adams. And one of the things he said in Patch Adams was, he was in a courtroom or something. He said, you treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, you win no matter what the outcome is.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do, is start treating the person.
And maybe we should use the word compassionate. When you compassionately treat, then you never lose.
Yeah, and I was lucky to have listened to Patch Adams. I attended a talk in New York City when I was still in medical school.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. I met the real Patch Adams. Yeah, yeah, that was great. It was a great experience.
I think about Robin and what a genius, comedic genius he was. But he did make a couple things where his name was Robin, so in school they called him a bird. Hey bird. And he was short, and they would always call him Shorty. So those things stick. He remembered that into his adulthood. Those stick. And, I think comedy and being funny got him to be accepted. But when you think about his comedy, and I mean, comedians up there and writing jokes, and David Letterman talked about first time he saw Robin Williams, and he was like, we might as well just quit. Because, we're up there writing jokes, and he's up there, and his mind just never shut off. And he just went from one thing to another. And it was like, it was so genius. But again, he couldn't shut his mind off.
Yes.
So I think there was a lot of things going through he was troubled, but
another gifted genius.
Oh my God,
yeah. But a mind that
a lot of guys. Andy Kaufman was like that too. And they all died too young. So
and it shows us that I think we'll talk about this a little bit, like there's not a typical suicide profile, right? Like we can think about the ones that are introverted and the ones that, might be, struggling to learn a certain way or whatever, even the word neurodivergent or whatever, even that. But we just don't know, right? We just don't know. And so it's just asking as a community just to kind of be more aware, not that we can't fix anyone really. All we can do is create a space where people can express. And sometimes comedy is a way to hide, right, what we're feeling, right? Makes them laugh so it deflects, my pain. And that could be a coping mechanism, but, you get applauded for it and it makes you money. And
he talked
right? So then how do
too.
you bring that mask off? So I think that's a.
The fame that came so fast, there was just more pressure. And more stress on him.
Yeah, and like these students also to come to this university, WPI is a really, an amazing place to be, right? Doing amazing cutting edge stuff in so many fields. And so there's like, how am I going to achieve this? How am I going to keep this going? So there's intense academic pressure, and that's what they found. I mean, they knew it, right? But it was good for them to acknowledge it again. And so that social connection, and that students were burnt out, with the pandemic, along with the faculty. They didn't have self-care habits because really the prize, as we were saying, was, like with Robin, was on comedy, right? And here it was on academic performance. Yeah. How much can you produce? And so what does it mean if you care? How do you do that? And that even that the stuff that they already had on campus, it's not like WPI was not aware and they didn't have existing, resources to support the students. I think that's really important for us to say that they really did. Yeah. But the students weren't even aware of what these resources were. So it just shows you, like, you might be thinking, oh, we have everything covered, but it's not being communicated. So why this study was so good, because they really opened up the whole box and said, sometimes it's like they say you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but sometimes you do. You have to go back and admit, something isn't working.
Well, there's probably a lot of schools that would have tried to have swept it under the rug, but you have to applaud them. I have to applaud them for the way they handled this and being so transparent and so inclusive.
Yeah. And I think I was very touched by that because I've been, as you know, talking about mental health, studying mental health and working with clients facing different things. And I've seen that where there is so much shame, right? There's so much shame. I mean, they say a death by suicide, first of all, it just disrupts the whole everything, right? Because it's especially a young person dying, right? So it disrupts the whole social idea of how things should be. But it's like generational, the trauma that happens. It's not just there. And so there's so much stigma. It used to be that certain, in the Catholic tradition, churches, you couldn't be buried, right? If this was by suicide, you couldn't be buried. And there was all ideas of what happens to your soul after, So we have so much stuff. So whatever part of it we respond to, it is this tendency, I don't want to look at it, right? I don't want to look at it. And unfortunately, colleges, we've talked about it, it can become more of like their social appeal, their draw to their reputation, right? So, and it's a shame, right? It's a shame that it's shamed this way, because it doesn't need to be. And this really, top-notch university showed that it doesn't. And the director of counseling was even approached by other college faculty, like, how are you doing this? And why are you doing this? And they were like, hey, this is how we have to process. This is really important. And maybe by sharing, we can learn and you can learn, right? And so isn't that like a true higher education, learning, science model?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And as a parent, you would, be grateful that there's a school that's giving that support if you're going to send your child there, which could make a difference between sending them or not sending them there. So,
and that's a great point too. That the parents were invited, to speak. They weren't shut out, and I think that's a problem in colleges. If you have an adult who might be struggling with something, there's HIPAA laws and all that parents could be paying for the tuition, love their child to pieces, and something's going on and they don't know about it. So there's a lot of things we need to address going forward. But I think it's wonderful that the parents were included, because I would say the majority of parents love their children and want the very best for them. And certainly when you send them off to college, you want them to be safe.
Yeah.
That's such a leap.
Yeah, and it's so sad, right? That here you go, send your child and, first generation parents and, all the hoops they might have gone through or just whatever it took, right, to get your child there, and it's very sad. I've read so many accounts from parents talking about it, and it's like in one swoop, everything is gone, your whole dreams for this child. So this is something that, it's a difficult topic to talk about. It's not easy, but it needs to be talked about. It needs to be brought out that love is there. But as you know, we need more, right? We need systems. We need safety. We need to think about, well, actually, if I want to just kind of jump ahead, because what they did is created this care team, right? Which I thought was really amazing, because what they did was basically anyone on the college campus, if they felt a student was at risk, like maybe not coming to classes or something was off or they were just worried, they could contact this care team. And when they addressed it, they invited like support staff, ancillary staff. So even janitors wanted to attend because, hey, maybe I'll see something. And how many times, it would be often the janitor or the person who's on the food line, they're the ones that see something, right? And no one else knows. So that care team, basically, once they were notified, the same day, they will have quietly reached out to the students' contacts, their professors, counseling center, just to approach the student with support, right? Support, not like, okay, you're in trouble, you're in academic probation or this is going to happen. No, like, hey, how are you doing? And that model, I mean, it's so old, it's very simple, right?
But people need to be seen and noticed when they're doing well and when they're not.
When they're not doing well.
And how wonderful that it's from a friendly face, like, somebody who works in the cafeteria or the janitor or your classmate, somebody who's part of the community. Yeah.
Yeah, because usually we know around when suicide happens, often it's impulsive and there's a call made out to someone, usually. Yeah. There's something has been done. And the thing is, it's no one's fault, right? We don't want to say it's a fault thing. But if we could equip community to say, hey, there's support for you if you don't know what to do. Like, it's okay. You're going to be supported. And I think that could just change. Right. It would because it is preventable.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
When we speak at developmental days at high schools and stuff, just about eating disorders, and they include the coaches, they include the lunch lady, anybody that comes in contact with the students, because they're the ones that can notice something that the parents, because the kids are gone from 7:30 in the morning till sometimes 7:30 at night if they've got athletic things to do. So,
that's right. That's right.
And then they come home and they're with the parents for an hour or so, and then they go to bed. So
that's right.
It's other people out there that can notice and bring something to someone's attention. So
let's just talk about the takeaways. So we were talking about that a little bit, but the things that came to fruition from this article might be helpful to other colleges that face similar mental health crises among their student population. And then how our schools, our society, and workplaces need to be more humanized, and we need more awareness and more connection. So I think a holistic perspective is needed towards the students. They are not just there to study, take tests, write papers, and achieve, but they are whole people and whole persons who need that personalized approach to their education, their learning process. They need time to rest. They need time for social connections and just self-care for their total well-being. And the student wellness must be central to the college institution's mission. And I think with these very high-functioning, driven people, young people, they sometimes have trouble slowing down and don't know the meaning of self-care. They go, 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 go.
Well, they're not allowed to slow down.
Well,
a lot of times they're just not.
This is true. This is true. College moves very fast. And if you miss a day or 2 days or something, it's not like the work stops.
Right.
So I agree. So there is, it's fast. Yeah.
So Jake, do you want to tell us in the article, the mental health needs, they need to be prioritized along with academic performance?
Yeah, well, again, some kids can work at a very fast-paced, nonstop, way, but others need some flexibility with their assignments and their deadlines. Oh my God, I got to get this done. Because I got this deadline, and I got to get that one, and then I got this deadline, so I got to get that one done too. I mean, it just adds to that stress. Linda, we have our support groups. We start with a little meditation, just to kind of just stop and close your eyes and get your feet on the floor and just time for reflection. And I think that would be a great thing to do when they have these classes. I'm assuming the school, WPI, doesn't have the big lecture halls that some of the other larger universities do. So they're probably smaller classes where they could just take, 5 minutes and just, okay, let's just chill for a minute here,
And sometimes 2 minutes can even make a difference.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And then, as you said, so you got a kid who you haven't seen for 2, 3, or maybe a week in class. Well, you need to reach out to somebody and find out, where he or she is.
Yes.
And not just let it go. So somebody who, always fastidious in their dress and stuff, and now they're coming in and they haven't shaved for a week and the hair is not, not combed and stuff. So, and the grades, could be a grade student whose grades are slipping. So there's something going on.
Yes.
That's not normal. So.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that students who come to this university, this type of university, are very selected, right? This is not they have all the tests they had to pass and the grade point averages. So it's like they've done such hard work. And then when they come to this, there's such a sense of shame to seek help.
Yeah.
And so for the faculty to understand, which they started to understand and started to do some of those things, they talked about, the students just coming in and doing like one of those Buddhist, the bowls, and checking in, how are you today? What's your name and how are you today? So everyone gets to know. And you're allowed to say, I'm not doing too well today, But I think the thing that's really important is if students aren't showing up, if their grades are dipping, the faculty had to reshift their way of thinking that it's not like they're compromising academic standards. These students are not trying to get away. There might be that exceptional student, but for the most part, they're really suffering. And they feel ashamed to ask for help because they're so, as you said, high functioning. And now all of a sudden, like, what's going on? Right. So I think that's that barrier of how I perceive the student who really needs help isn't trying to be disrespectful to me. And they had to work around that as well.
Well, and you think about high functioning student in high school, and then you go to a very high ranking college like Worcester, right? And everybody's brilliant.
Yes.
Everybody's brilliant.
Yes. Yes. And so how do you shine here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If everyone's brilliant, so how do you?
Everybody's brilliant in their own way. I do believe that, but we all have different gifts. But it's just so many monumental changes in such a short time.
Yeah.
But appearance makes a difference. I mean, you can tell when a lot of times when somebody isn't feeling well or they're depressed because they don't look the same. They don't take the time with their personal appearance, and if they're missing classes and all those things. Those are the things that need to be paid attention to. But yet, there's something called smiling depression, and a lot of people can, keep it under the radar and keep, doing what's expected of them, and people are shocked.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's really difficult to pinpoint because they're very good at keeping things under the vest, these people. So, it's a challenge. I mean, how do you recognize that if there's really no signs? You'd have to be very, very close and perceptive.
Yes. Yes. And it requires a lot of the faculty too now, right? Because they are in this place where we are. We just can't run from that. It's requiring the faculty to keep their eyes open, keep their ears open, stay in touch, which the faculty at WPI was. They were checking in. They were, calling them on their phones and checking in on them. So, which is not what they were trained to do. So the faculty were given more training, and that's like rethinking about, because as we know, when there's tenure, right, there's publishing, and, doing coaching or even counseling for students is traditionally, it's not paid. Right. So this is very difficult, but WPI, like they're one place that they're acknowledging it, they're addressing it, and, showing that, okay, we're going to do more, or we're going to, do this a little differently.
And I think going forward, people need to talk about their struggles more openly.
Yeah.
If they've struggled with suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, it's okay. It's okay. We're human. We're going to struggle with things, and there should be no shame or stigma. And we just have to work on that. and people have to maybe decide they don't want to tell everybody, but, your circle is important.
Yeah, well, everybody doesn't deserve to hear the story because,
Right. I always say that too. Not everybody deserves to hear a story, but hopefully you have a few people, family member, a circle of friends that you feel close enough that you could share, and you would hope that they would share with you, right?
And, you think about the students, the stress they're under, so to add them to the care team, I mean, it takes a really special person that wants to be on that care team to be able to support and help someone else. There's somebody that somebody can go to and talk about their problems, because that just adds to something else that they've got to do including their academics and everything else that got going on in their lives. So it takes a special person, and there are special people out there.
For sure. And I think I just wanted to kind of add two things that I love the humility of this institution, their transparency, their willingness. They even invited in independent people to review their existing mental health resources and protocols so that they could see, well, where are we? Where do we stand? So that requires, I really feel that's the beginner's mind, and that's a true scientist, beginner's mind. And then also, speaking about the community, the author of the article spoke to the Dean King of the College of Arts and Sciences. What would she sum up? Like, what happened? What did they do? And she said, well, the basic thing is that there has to be a collectivity perspective, a community perspective that's key to both individual and community resilience. So much of mental health stigma can be this individual paradigm. It's the individual's fault. They need to get individual therapy, and it's right? Versus, no, this is a community, right? This is one of us that's suffering. And so this is where we're involved. And so basically, I loved her words where she says, I think all of us have to be able to say to each other, and even to the people who are suffering, this is difficult. As you were saying, Linda, right? This is difficult for me. I feel you. I'll try to help you, but know that I may not be perfect. We all have to take that up. Yeah, that we may not be perfect. We all have to take that up, that we are trying. That's all we can say. And then her definition of community, again, just really resonated for me, and I'm going to quote her again. I think that's what community is, coming together and saying, I'm vulnerable, just like you are. I'm trying. I'm not going to leave you alone.
Wow. Yeah.
Profound, for sure.
Yeah.
And from the heart.
It really touches you. Yeah.
There was another, again, he keep going back to me watching Robin Williams again yesterday, but it was just, having this conversation today about mental health, and then, watching that yesterday, it was no coincidence that they turned it on. And, he said, the human spirit is more powerful than any drug, and that is what needs to be nourished.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and community can nourish.
Healing and community. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Everybody has to heal in community. If you're sick and you go to the hospital and you get treatment, but you finish healing at home in your community from physical, emotional, mental health issues. And that's why we need to raise the bar. Right?
Everybody knows somebody. Everybody knows somebody that's struggling with some mental illness, and it's just more and more pervasive in our young people. I don't know, again, because I think back to my high school days, my college days, and I went to a fairly large high school with 300 and some odd graduates. Then I went to a very small pharmacy school that was smaller than my high school. And but who knows what was going on with people, when they went back to their apartments or and things. But it just didn't seem to have that much of an issue way back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s like there is today. So
there's a lot going on back then, too. But, I think what we're learning here should also not just be about colleges. I mean, this should be about high schools. It should be about workplaces. I think that we expect so much of our people, just in general, our citizens, is employees. Okay, there's technology. We can, put out so much more work because of technology, but it seems like no matter what you do, they always up it a little bit more. And there's not as much support. I remember a while back when somebody was sick and, maybe was going through chemo or, some extensive treatment and had to take a lot of time off from work, that the people in the department each gave some of their personal time to the person who had to use all their sick time. And I thought, oh my God, that is so beautiful. I mean, talk about community. Yeah. And, it used to be a lot of smaller businesses where they were run more like your work family that really, really cared. Yeah. And I think now a lot of times there are so many things have gotten so much bigger that people just don't feel like they matter. They feel like they're a number. And that's sad. And I think that there are some really good things still happening. There are some businesses that are large that manage to make people feel seen and heard and understood and all those things. But I think there's a lot of burnout and there's a lot of expectation places. And I think we can always do better. But, we have to be human and we have to talk.
Yeah,
conversation.
Yeah, and I feel it's such a struggle with mental health because I've always used this analogy, like if you fracture or if you break a bone, then maybe you have a cast, maybe you have crutches, maybe you need a wheelchair to get around, and people can see it, and then you can get x-rays done, and you'll get physical therapy, and there's like anticipated, and people aren't going to expect you to drive a car, right? Because, if you fractured your right foot or whatever. So there's a sense of community that it just draws community, right? Because people see those physical signs. But with mental health, when it's internal, right? And you just can't get out of bed. You can't get out of bed. You can't finish an assignment, and that's the thing that I really think with a lot of people, we think about suicide or mental illness, like, we put like this judgment on it, like they're weak, or like you said, they can't keep up, they're the weak ones. And I think we really have to look at that really closely, because everything that I've read, everything I've studied, everything I've seen with the ones that I've, helped take care of, they are really trying so hard. They are trying so hard. I mean, it's like a mountain. And just because for me, I'm not feeling that doesn't mean that they're not fractured internally in some way, that they're not, suffering, not broken, right? Not broken, but just, that they're really suffering. And I think that's where we want to see these as this is really a call for help. People don't know how to ask for it. They're not sure. They're already in such self-judgment of themselves. The last thing they need is more societal, community, family, professional judgment. They do need love. They do need compassion. They do need understanding. They need to be seen. Even if you don't know what to do, which many of us aren't because everyone's journey is so different, just the fact that we can say, hey, like Linda, you've been saying, like, I'm here. Right. What can I do? Tell me. What is it like for you? Can I, just that starts to what? It opens their isolation, builds something, and then that could be the step, right?
And they may not accept it the first time, but just don't give up. Just let them know that you're still there and you care.
That's so important.
So,
yeah, that is important.
I heard an acronym for human on a podcast, and I have to go back and listen to it again. I have to find it, but so I can give the person credit. But for human, H, all people need to be heard. U, all people need to be understood. M, all people need to be motivated. A, all people need to be accepted. And N, all people need to be needed. Isn't that a great great acronym?
Great.
So
yeah. That's beautiful. And all people, M need to matter. Everyone matters.
Yes. We could double M it.
We could double M it. Yeah, M&Ms. Yes.
Yeah, and all these people are doing the best that they can. I mean, they are really, truly doing the best. I mean, we say that about Emily when she was struggling with her eating disorder, and we were so frustrated with things that were going on with the system and everything, but she was doing the best that she could. And we never gave up on her. And
no, we didn't. And we were, hopeful, and we just have to do better. That's why we're doing this, because everybody's mental health matters, and we have wonderful brains. But sometimes, what do we call? What do they call brain? So people
Brain health.
Brain health, yes. So sometimes one part of our brain might not be firing quite as well as all the rest of the brain that's working fantastically.
Yes.
So I like that brain health. It doesn't sound stigmatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm just grateful that we did this together, and the work that you both are doing, as you know, it just inspires me every day. And whoever will be listening, we've brought up a lot of heavy, difficult topics, and if you're listening to this and you're experiencing something, we really just all encourage you to please, talk to someone, find someone that you can trust, that you can talk to and express, and just know you're not alone. And you matter. Wherever you are, you matter.
And if you don't have a pet, you might need to get one.
Yes.
Wow. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Seema. You are one of the most compassionate, wonderful people. There's something about pediatricians for sure. Thank you for all the people that you have touched, and thank you for being part of this podcast and being a very special friend. Thank you, RockVox recording and production, and thank you, sound engineer and producer Scott Fitzgerald, for expertly producing our podcast, and so much more. And the links for today's show are in the show notes.
And also remember that RockVox is the place to record your podcast, record your audiobook, or do a legacy cast for your loved ones. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Till next time.
If you are having thoughts of self-harm, please call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Hotline, or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255.